I'm just so beautiful, so glad to see that beautiful face.
Thank you.
Yes. So we will take 30 minutes or whatever time you need. I'm going to ask you one, or I should say two simple questions. First, to tell us your name, and then share anything about you want us to know.
Again, good morning, Dr. Newton. My name is Joe Webster, and let's see, what should I tell you about myself that you don't already know, but since this is for some of the benefit of others, I am, right now, I'm serving as a magistrate judge, United States magistrate judge for the Middle District of North Carolina, which includes counties from Durham all the way to before you get to Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow.
Before that, I was an administrative law judge for the state of North Carolina at the Office of Administrative Hearings. And for almost 41-year career, at least half of it, I was had my own law practice as a general practitioner. But I had my beginnings many years ago in my hometown of Madison, North Carolina, a small rural community north of Greensboro, where I grew up on a farm and worked on that and worked for other people and worked in the textile mills and so forth. But after that, I went off to Howard University in the fall of 1972, and I dare say that helped shape my worldview and my life, and I couldn't have gone to a better place than Howard University. And just being there in Washington, D.C., and being a part of the lives of persons from all over the country and world. So that is what I want you to know most, but also just the fact that I'm just celebrated my 40th wedding anniversary on May the 3rd.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I have 3 adult children. They're all married and all have at least one child. And just on Sunday, I had just a wonderful Father's Day with all of them except for my youngest daughter, who she and her husband and son were not with us in Chapel Hill, but we just had a wonderful Father's Day.
Let me ask you a couple of things that you had not said. You wrote a book recently. Can you tell us about the book?
Yeah, the book is about, the title of it is The Making and Measure of a Judge, biography of the Honorable Sammie Jr., who was, among many things, he was the first Black Superior Court judge in North Carolina. And he was appointed by Governor Scott in, I guess it was November of 1971. And it's about his life, about his ancestors, about how he grew up in Allendale County, South Carolina, which is still one of the poorest counties in the country, yeah. And certainly in the state of South Carolina. And he, grew up under, as most African Americans back then, on farms in the South. And his dad at some point figured out how it was that he was not able to really make a decent living or even make a profit. And he, like 5 million others, fled the South and ended up in Harlem, New York. When he was 9 years old, stayed there several years, and he and his mother moved to High Point, North Carolina, where he, what he found was the same thing as when he left to go to New York. things are very, very segregated. Judge Chess had been born in 1934 in the middle of, the Great Depression. And so he just saw a lot. Of course, schools were segregated. And when he turns, one of the interesting things about him, and in fact, I just earlier, I guess it was late last week or early this week, a young man came before me in court who had quit school, and which is really almost par for the course of the young, mostly African-American males that I see. And so I shared and gave him one of my books and autographed it for him because I wanted, in fact, I tagged the page that said, it was a news article that in the book that said that Judge Chess had went from the cotton fields to quitting school or something to that effect. So he had dropped out of school, but he dropped out of school, but yet that wasn't the end of his story because his Black principal came and found him. And which is something that, I dare say we don't have enough of today. When we're falling through the cracks, there's nobody to come and find us. And so, that's the reason I gave him the book. And I actually asked his lawyer whether he could read, and she said, "Oh yeah, he can read." And so I just hope that he will read at least portions of that book. But Judge Chess rose to great acclaim because he was first and foremost just a great person who actually quotes his father more than anyone else in his life, even though his father never went to school. But he learned a lot from him. And so Judge Chess has become really a role model and one of the greatest friends that I have at this time. And so I wrote the book not to make money on it, but I wrote it so that people will know about Judge Sammie Chess Jr., who's just a great American.
And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, you went to visit him. You went to his home.
Oh, I visited him. First of all, I've known Judge Chess for over 30 years. And there was a time in the history of North Carolina that the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers was a very, very powerful institution. We all came together. In fact, I was just on the phone with Judge Chess earlier I guess it was, Monday. And we were just talking about the fact that this is about the time of the year in the month of June when most of the Black lawyers in the state of North Carolina would get together at Myrtle Beach or the coast or of North Carolina or usually some beach, and a long weekend, and we would be able to come together and chat about our law practices, because that's what most of us were in, practicing law. We were not with big firms, we were not with corporations and so forth. And so we had a lot to talk about and a lot to learn from one another.
So you and I did a John Hope Franklin talk about the book, which I think was very, very enlightening to a lot of people. I've heard a lot of positive responses from that. What are you hearing from your book sales and people who have read or have the book? Have you heard people say that it's a great piece of literature to help you understand the life of Judge Chess?
Yeah, for those who have read it, I don't know about you, but I find sometimes that we don't read as much as we need to read. But what I've learned from whites that have read it, and some of these have been like, I remember a dean of a certain law school said to me, I didn't what I learned from the book was just a lot that I did not know. And because the book covers a period of our history that is kind of hard for some people to read.
Yeah.
To learn about how we were treated
Mhm.
and how Judge Chess was treated. I mean, he won a case in the southwestern part of the state, and the lawyer after the case was heard referring to him as using the N-word.
Mhm.
And it was, Judge Chess describes it as the only case that his father ever witnessed him try, only case that he heard it witness him try. And so they were on their way out the door, and so this lawyer, opposing lawyer, referred to this successful lawyer as using the N-word, and Judge Chess, and this says a mouthful about Judge Chess. He and his father just kept walking out the door. And I'm, as I said in the book, I'm glad that he did that rather than, as some people would have done, gotten very mad and maybe started an argument or even a fight. And because that showed what kind of person he was. And in fact, I asked Judge Chess nearing the completion of the book, I asked him, I said, how is it that you know, he grew up hearing his grandmother talk about night riders down in South Carolina, meaning Ku Klux Klan members, and riding through the community. And he witnessed segregation. He witnessed all the things that were just so terrible in our society at the time. I said, how could you do that and be a fair and impartial judge? And he said something to the fact that if you stoop to the level of a KKK member, then you're not well grounded.
Amen.
And so I think that young people in particular could learn a lot just from that statement alone. And so I'm certainly still learning from a lot of his wisdoms. Like this morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock and my mind went back to something he said about his own father, and that was that his father was up early before it got light to work on the farm, and he would often say, I got to get a jump on the sunshine. So Dr. Newton, I think I've heard you say you're from South Carolina, so I know you know how hot it gets.
Amen.
Very early in the morning in North and South Carolina, but
very humid state.
Yeah, very humid. Yes. Yeah.
So Judge Webster, of course, we have a relationship that's gone back several years, but can you tell us how you and I know each other? And I did not.
I became I met you several years ago. Actually, I guess it's been maybe 5 years ago now, about when I was accepted into the master's program for judges at Duke University Law School. And I'd get to school early, and often you would already be there in the morning, and you were assigned to help us, most of us old lawyers, about certain things with the computer and all of that. And you were computer extraordinaire, you know. You wasn't nothing about that you seem to not understand and do. And anyway, you helped us through that, and I will be forever grateful to you for that, because that really was one of the things that I was worrying about, how to navigate all of that. And you were there. You taught us what to do and what not to do, and you just made yourself available. And so that's how I first met you. And then the most amazing thing was that even since that's all been over, I have been invited, my wife and I, to your home many times as you prepared food at like feast for not only us, but neighbors, family members, students, uh, Duke University law students who you understood that you know, knew that they were men away from home and in some ways in a foreign land.
Right.
And so you just made them feel welcome. You made us feel welcome. And you know, you've, Lord knows how much money you've spent of your own treasure. And so I've just been impressed with what you have been trying to do, I'm sure for many years at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina.
Absolutely. The reason why I asked you that question, because I wanted to get to the point of back to your Judge Chess. That was your thesis in your LLM program.
Yes, that was my thesis for my LLM at Duke. And we had to, you know, I've never been one who was good at statistics and all, you know, there are all kinds of theses that you could do, I suppose, that involving statistics. But you know, actually it was my roommate, Judge Hawkins, who is on the Sixth Circuit. I mean, he's a district judge, senior district judge out in the Ninth Circuit and in Arizona. And so he and I was kind of like telling him, I said, man, I don't know what I'm going to write about or write for. And he said, you say you like history or something to that effect. Well, who was the first Black Superior Court judge in North Carolina? And I said, well, I know, I'm personal friends with him. I know him well. And so that really is, in that very day, I called up Judge Chess and I said, you know, I'm at this program for judges working on my master's, and I'd love to write a biography on you. And he immediately said, I'd love that. And so that's how it came to be. And that very, we were mid-May to mid-June and on the campus. And then sometime late June, I believe it was, I made my first trip to High Point area to visit in his home and start recording and writing about him. I will say that out of all the things that God has blessed me to accomplish, I would select that one book as being kind of at the very top, because first of all, I had zero idea or thought that any day that I would write a book on anyone. And so I know that it's probably not the best writing that a book that has ever been written, but as far as I'm concerned, you know, because of what it includes and the person who is it about, it's top of the line as far as I'm concerned.
It's an excellent book. It's an excellent book, and you should make no bones about that. It's an excellent book. I've read it 3 or 4 times. I've written notes into the side of things you or he have said. It's an excellent book. And just to confirm, it's still in print and can be purchased. Is that correct?
Yes, it's on Amazon and it's on that, it's on Kindle.
Okay.
And, you know, you asked me about, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's sold, you know, a lot of people have purchased it. I mean, it's, whenever you go that route, you don't expect to make much per book. And the book is what, $14.95 or something like that. And I mean, I haven't, and you know, it's really, I guess, Judge Chess and I, and one of my law externs, we're down in Asheville, just right before the coronavirus hit. So this is like over 3 years after it was published. I'm still getting requests to come and talk about it.
Amen.
So we got in the car and drove down there and ate the reason we were asked to come is that Judge Chess had received a request to come down and represent a lot of people who had been arrested in demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
And they were demonstrating a segregated restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Hops or something to that effect. But in any event, we decided that we were going to eat there. Mm-hmm. And so we went and had dinner before going over to the library to talk about the book, and Judge Chess talk about his life. So I bring that up only in the sense that we've been to a number of places and universities. We were over at Wake Forest. I was over at Wake Forest Law School, North Carolina Central's Law School. I've talked about the book at a historical library in High Point. And so it's just really been a blessing even to me to be a part of that.
So I have a few questions I want to ask you about what's happening in recent time, but I want to talk to you about something else. So one of the things, as long as I've known you, you have been such a gracious and kind and generous man. And oftentimes I'll get an email from you about a sermon you just preached or are going to preach, or something you have recorded. I think you did something from Juneteenth. You did something, I think, mothers and sons. All of these things you share with me. Can you talk a little bit about what those things are, and how do you come about to doing them?
Well, let me just say first, I'm trying to, after almost 41 years in the legal profession, I'm trying to learn to say no to some of these.
Good luck with that.
But it's hard, because to whom much is given, much is required.
It's required.
I feel like I'm the most blessed human being on earth, and so it's hard for me to say no to people. So I was asked to, for example, the mothers with sons, the person who kind of got that started asked if I would come and speak. Mm-hmm. It was a Zoom conference, and so I did, and there was a lot of, it really turned in. This was like on the day or the day after Mr. George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. And it was that, I think it was the same day that the lady in New York Park called the police on the African American male, and who demonstrated what she thought about white privilege. Mm-hmm. And so the conversation, the questions started talking about that. My two daughters were on, who live in DC, and so we talked about that. They asked me to give them some thoughts about how mothers can maybe better raise their Black sons. And so that's what we attempted to do. Don't know how successful we were, but I'm sometimes amazed that I think some people think that I know more than I know, but obviously it's hard if you are an African American male in American society. You have to have some thoughts about all that is going on around us and so forth. And so I think I probably shared with them that, as a federal judge, there's a possibility that some sort of case, whether it be racial discrimination or something, or any of these cases where you see officers involved in the killing or shooting, or Black males in particular, could possibly come before me. So I'm often limited in what I can say about that, but I just always try to speak the truth, and to try to go about it in a way that people still will believe that I'm a fair and impartial
You are
judge.
very impartial. You can't be anything but that. That would be so contradictory to your character. You are fair and impartial. Impartial. It makes no difference who you are. You are that.
Well,
You know.
thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about where your church is and what you do in your church?
Yeah. Right now, I am an associate at Oberlin Baptist Church in Raleigh. It is a very historical church built in part by ex-slaves in 1880 in the Oberlin community there in Raleigh. It's has a lot of history to that community where a lot of Blacks grew up, but yet, like many places, it's being gentrified by the second. And so I was invited to a revival there 5 or 6 years ago and went, and it reminded me a lot of my home church, the Goodwill Baptist Church in Madison, North Carolina, just in the sense of size and the makeup of it. And so I'm actually an associate, I'd say part-time associate minister there. It's all, there's nothing that I charge for or anything. I just go there at least twice a month and try to help. Of course, we all are under quarantine in a sense, and it's by calling in right now. But you know, it's that yet is an opportunity to even reach more people.
Right.
Than actually come. I mean, one of the missing links in our church and society today is the young Black male who are struggling to appreciate or understand the importance of coming together. But I'm trying to get across to my immediate family that that's how I got to where I am, and I can't hide behind that. And in fact, I'll tell you that some years ago, probably 15 years ago, I was applying to some law schools to try to teach, and I actually got into a debate with myself about whether I should put on my resume that I was an ordained minister. Mm-hmm. And because I know that, you know, there are different faiths mm-hmm. in any law school or any on campus, and then I just decided that I am who I am.
You are who you are.
And I can't hide behind that. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah. Well, I think most universities stray away from religion and politics. So as long as it's not unless you're teaching a religion class or a political class, that become an issue, but they do not use that as a measure as to whether they hire or don't hire someone, because that's not within the practices of the schools. Right. And I know you have tried to teach at Duke Law, and I don't know whether you've lost interest in that, but I have. When Dean Levy was still the dean, I did share that with him. I think you and him may have talked, and I don't know if you talked to the current dean or not, but you know, if you decide you want to, I think you'd make an amazing faculty, because there's so few Black voices that are there. And one of the reasons why we do so many dinners and we have so many events is so they can meet people like you, you know. So when the kids come, and not just Duke, but Central Carolina come, they meet you. And to meet you is an honor. You know, to be in your presence is an honor. And I think to have someone like you at Duke, UNC, wherever you want to go, is a benefit to them more than it is to you, because your character, your commentary, your actions are always fair, kind, and generous, even in the meting out justice in the legal system.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And I guess for the moment, for today, I'm concentrating on being the very best United States Magistrate Judge that I can be, and perhaps at some point in the future I can teach someplace, whether it's Duke or someplace else. I try to live a balanced life, and I think that is so important that I try not to just because I've been asked to be a member of this board or that board. You know, there is again a balanced life is important. I got a wife who I love a lot and who cares and who wants to talk to me sometime. And there, and I have grown children, and now I have grandchildren that I'm trying to kind of mentor. And so I don't want to just be, then there's ministry. I don't want to just be consumed such that I'm not effective in any, whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And I think that most people understand that.
Well, Judge Webster, I think that's absolutely correct, but I would just tell you, I don't think you do anything halfway. I think you do it all the correct and the right way.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions, and we have about 8 minutes. I have a couple of questions, and I am going to give the floor to you after the couple of questions. The first question is what is the plight of Black Americans, and I would even say brown Americans in the United States from your lens?
Wow, powerful question. I think that there are many of us who the recent events have caused us to be maybe more optimistic than we have been in many years. You know, certainly I am old enough that I grew up when I went to the downtown Madison Theater and had to walk up to the balcony to the movies. And I never will forget that. 20 cents is what it cost, but we had to walk up. In fact, I was asking a cousin of mine, I said, why didn't we do something about that? You know, but as a child, you know, my parents were hardworking Christian people, and they were not leaders of the NAACP. They were not, you know, in the civil rights struggle. And so I didn't have that model. But as to today, I'm feeling optimistic, and I'm feeling more optimistic than I've felt in a long time, because I think that our young men, Black and white, they don't care so much about what color a person is, you know. And I'm seeing as many or more whites in the civil rights, in the marches, as I am seeing persons of color. And so, and you know, we saw that to a great degree when Dr. King was, you know, leading demonstrations, but not nearly as much as we're seeing today. And so I feel like good is going to overcome evil, that light is brighter than darkness.
Amen. Amen.
And so I'm feeling optimistic. I will say to you that as I've talked with my age or older whites, I am a little bit disappointed. They're not as disappointed as I am or others or Blacks are about what is going on, you know. And it's, you know, they will often say, well, you know, yeah, I'm really disappointed. You know, I can see that how they treated Mr. Floyd was just terrible, but that's the end of it.
Right.
You know, there is, as has been spoken about, the sin of silence.
Yep. The sin of silence.
The sin of silence. Yep. And I'm just, for those, especially those persons of faith, I'm expecting more out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
I really am expecting more out of them, because certainly our examples in the faith are not about misusing the authority of law enforcement and so forth. So, but I'm the state of, but I'm on the other hand, I'm also concerned. I see in my work as a federal judge, I see young Black males who seem to have given up.
Yeah.
And so I just try to, not in every case, but try to encourage them. And I've been trying to dispense justice while offering hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so every once in a while, I'll see, as I'm talking, we'll see tears coming down.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
It really is.
So I'm hopeful.
I am hopeful too, but like you, I remember the march in Selma where you had white and Black and other people protesting, you know, people being beaten, hoses, you know, whatever they could do to disrupt a peaceful protest. And we've seen a little bit of that even now in amidst of this. And our current leader uses our efforts to bring attention to our plight as something that is against him, which is very disheartening, but it is what it is. Okay, my last question, and then you got 4 minutes. My last question is this. Why is the rate of incarceration among Black and brown people so high?
There, you know, it's not just one answer to that or one reason for that. Poverty is up there.
Yeah.
As far as, I mean, and sometimes we were discussing, the leadership of the court was discussing, I think, the wearing of masks and sometimes if we have not ever walked in poverty, we don't know what it's like to be turned down for one job right after another. And especially if you have a felony conviction, you know, you're gonna have to work for minimum wage or maybe even less, you know, be paid under the table, something. And so we have to remember how blessed and how privileged we are to be able to have a job where you can work from home.
Right.
I would say that, you know, when I was first coming to grips with that, I'm thinking like, you know, my son, who is 30 years old now, he is a manager at a Trader Joe's in Chapel Hill, and he didn't have the luxury to work from. There's no such thing as working from home. There's no such thing as working from home for the doctors and well, some doctors I understand are working
doing virtual visits.
Virtual visits, but those on the front line don't have that luxury at all. And so, but it is we could talk another hour, I suppose, about the many reasons. But I've been kind of I've been on criminal duty the month of June. I've seen so many persons charged with crimes that arise out of being gang members. And I've given thought to, you know, why do we have gangs? Well, they don't have gangs because they don't have fathers or father figures, and often mothers who even tell them right from wrong. And so they reach out to others who are similarly situated and so forth. And as to the disparity in numbers, I'm told that we as a people, up until recently, you know, you got a lot more time for crack cocaine than you did powder cocaine. And so we've been incarcerated. Our communities are been devastated by those laws that take a second income, a voice who's saying, now son, you just can't do that, this or that. And so I'm so blessed to have been brought up with a mom and dad, even though my father only went to the 4th grade and my mother the 10th. But I saw them go to work every day,
Yeah.
and come home every evening and provide for us, all 8 of us, all 8 children. And I realize that I'm so blessed as a result of that.
Thank you, Judge Webster. Please, anything else you wish to share with us?
That's all, Dr. Newton. I want to just give a shout out to you just for being so generous with your time and your treasure, and for sharing with the Duke community and the Duke students so much. I mean, I just know that, I mean, I'm trying to think, I don't think I had a Dr. Newton when I was at Howard University, you know, but we had other methods of coming together, and it was, I'm sure, unlike being there at Duke University, where they don't necessarily have or don't feel like they have the community they need. And so I really appreciate what you're doing. Just God bless you. God bless you to continue to reach out and to do what you're doing. And I certainly hope that I'm continue to keep my health, to continue to do the work that I've been trying to do. And so we will, I really am looking forward to the next meal at your house.
Yeah, absolutely. The students have already writing me as soon as we get out of quarantine. I got to get to cooking. I've already had people send me what they want to eat.
We gotta social distance though, you know, and I'm still getting used to the mask and all of that, but we are.
As soon as they find a vaccine, we're gonna have a big dinner. You know,
Yeah,
all you guys are gonna come and help these kids along. You know, like you always do. But thank you for that. You know, I need all the prayer I can get. And, you know, I will say one thing before I leave this conversation is what you have been to my son is a godfather. You have been a wonderful, wonderful voice with him. I remember the first time he came and sat in your court, he was traumatized when he came home because he had never seen anything like that. He didn't even believe that existed until he had come to your court and sat in your court. You always ask about him and he always asks about you, you know, so I'm very, very glad that you are a part of our family. Your family is my family and my family is your family. And you know that if there's anything you need, day or night, call, text, whatever, and I'm right there.
Right.
Thank you. I am going, once this video is converted, I'm going to send it to you to review. If you agree, I will upload it. If you do not, we will either do over or not do it at all, whichever you prefer.
All right.
Thank you so much. And I love you, Judge Webster.
I love you too. Take care of yourself and tell your son and your husband I said hello.
I certainly will. I'm sure they're looking forward to seeing you again.
All right. Bye-bye.